afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Lehr with me, your host Imperial Dan. We're off here to have a look at the Jagdpanzer 4-70V V-sending for Wehrmacht. Whoops, scheiße! It was meant to go that fast. It was not meant to go that fast. We're off here to have a look at the Jagdpanzer, part of the Oberkommando West, available at a 400 manpower, 135 fuel for the Oberkommando West from the battle group headquarters. It is a tank destroyer on the assault gun sort of form, if you will. In terms of penetration, it's, well, somewhere between a Panther and a Panzer IV, if you will. Which also rather plays it uniquely as not being that effective versus heavier armor to a certain extent. At least not head-on. As you might be noticing, it's lacking a turret, which then noticeably lessens its effectiveness versus heavy armor head-on. So that's really sort of one thing there to keep in mind. Its frontal armor is not that frightfully good either. Again, it's a bit above a Panzer IV, but again below a Panther, and probably much closer to the Panzer IV than anything. Overall, for example, you might notice here, already down to half health. It has 60 range, that's something, but overall it lacks, well, most ability that sort of makes it any useful. It has the ability to hold fire versus armor, veteran's ability to get cautious movement, which makes it sort of cloaked, but also moving slower, which overall is not really effective most of the time. Maybe to hide from allied aircraft, and that's about it. For veterancy bonus, we get cautious movement, we get some armored skirts, improved optics, higher rate of fire and stuff like that, some accuracy later on, and the ability to gain a bonus while cloaked. In most cases, the Jagdpanzer IV will never ever reach veterancy 5, probably not even veterancy 3. Overall, I would personally not recommend the Jagdpanzer IV unless you are truly and utterly desperate beyond any other measure and there's nothing else that might even have a remote chance. Then sure, go for the Jagdpanzer IV, but if you have the choice, I would always recommend that a Panther, because you only have to pay a bit more than that and you'll get something that works both versus infantry, but it's also much better versus armor due to better armor, better penetration. Sure, it has less range, but it's also more mobile, has more health, and again, better armor, better penetration. It can defeat infantry. I mean, overall, for just a bit more, you get so much more in return. So, I mean, that's something to keep in mind. Or otherwise, you know, get the mechanized regiment and get some Puma, since they will also perform better due to better mobility. Also, they can pop smoke, and they will also function versus infantry better. And that's really sort of one of the major sort of issues I have with the Jagdpanzer IV. For something that's so expensive for a unit strapped, or for an army strapped for fuel, it is really extremely limited in utility, which overall limits its usefulness on the battlefield and what it can actually sort of do for you as a player. That combined with, as you might be noticing, it's not exactly the most nimble thing either, which also makes it easy to maneuver for a player with a good grasp on his T-34 Shermans. Hell, even a light tank can do it. And well, it doesn't really possess much usage. And you then also factor in it can't really deal much well versus heavy armor head-on, and medium to light armor will easily outmaneuver it, and overall it can't really do much. I mean, this is really sort of my main issue with the Jagdpanzer IV. For something so expensive, you really get absolutely nothing. And that is, in it, more or less why I pretty much never recommend the Jagdpanzer IV to anyone unless they're actually desperate. You're more likely to lose because you got the Jagdpanzer IV than you are to win. I mean, 7 out of 10 cases, maybe, you know, it will actually directly lead to your loss because it is simply such a huge waste of resources, and overall it possesses such limited utility, such limited scope in what it can actually do. I mean, compared to a normal tank, if you break through the enemy lines, it can't help you exploit it. It can't do anything. It can't attack in any position. It can't even threaten an enemy position. It can only maybe threaten its tanks, and all that requires is you shift some elsewhere a bit. And that's overall not really going to do much. It can't do anything versus the infantry. The support weapons, anti-tank guns, machine guns, mortars, you name it, it won't be able to do anything versus it. And again, versus armor, it will even struggle. I mean, I really have to say it is the absolute worst tank destroyer in the game. Of the non-doctrinal ones, most being the Elephant, and the actually are pretty close seconds otherwise. So really, I cannot recommend the Jagdpanzer 4. I mean, it requires your opponent to be not very good with this tank for you to sort of really get any serious use out of it. Otherwise, again, it's just no good. It is simply put no good at all. And again, overall, you're always better off getting something else than a Jagdpanzer 4. Always. There is never a point where the Jagdpanzer 4 will be the optimal choice. It never will be. Panther, Puma, King Tiger, Ostwind, I mean, anything is better than Jagdpanzer 4. So again, just don't use it. It is absolutely a god-awful unit that really has no place in the Oberkommando West, or for that matter, any army. But it might actually fit in better versus the Allies' armies, because, well, it seems like it's actually been configured to deal with German armour, not Allied armour. Which is also a bit odd. So, overall, that rather covers it on the Jagdpanzer 4. And again, my utmost recommendation is don't go for it unless you're utterly desperate. I simply cannot in good conscience recommend it. It is a very bad unit with extremely limited scope, extremely limited utility. And overall, again, considering the army's composition and limits, in most cases it will do you more harm than it will harm your opponent. So keep that very much in mind. And yes, my apologies for making this, perhaps not the most startlingly recommendative Propagandacast Lehr again, making a lot of suggestions, because again, it's just bad. It's just bad. So there you go. I really wish they'd change it and make it into something useful, and until then, again, I would very much advise you not to touch it. So this is Imperial Dane saying cheers. Thank you all for watching. I hope you learned something. I sincerely hope you did. If you did want to subscribe, tell your friends, share it with everyone. If not, well, that's quite unfortunate, but this is Imperial Dane saying cheers, and thank you all. See you tomorrow.